Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Kemi, and I'm here to talk about Bridgerton Season 4, Episode 4. So, we start the episode off with Sophie and Benedict. They're on their way back. They've just reached London, and Sophie is asking him about her new employers, and he's like sidestepping the questions. Like, he's answering them without really answering them. So, they pull up in front of Bridgerton House, and she was just like, oh, okay, is it a short walk from here? Because he was just like, oh, we're gonna walk. She was just like, oh, we're gonna walk. Is it a short walk? And he was just like, no, this is your new employer. And she was just like, there's no way that I can work for you. Um, I can't work for your family, X, Y, and Z. So he tells her, I've sent word to my friends, and all their wives told them that they can't hire you. So this is the best that I can do. So she was just like, I don't know what the other wives are talking about. I didn't do anything, but okay. So they go in the house, and Violet and Miss Wilson are there. Um, Violet is happy to see Benedict, and she pulls him to the side, and he was just like, did you not get my letter? And she'll just like, I got your letter, but you must not have gotten my letter because we don't have no space. And I've heard, Miss Wilson has heard some things about her. So Benedict is just like, no, I don't listen to rumors, and I trust her. She saved my life. And so Violet is, she's just like, oh, you saved my son's life. Okay. She asked about her qualifications. He tells her, her last, she doesn't have a recommendation from her last employer because it was a Cavender. And she was just like, oh, yeah, I never liked that boy. So she says, Eloise and Hyacinth need a ladies maid. So they're gonna hire her for that position. So we hear, so they go there, they're heading their separate ways. Miss Wilson is taking Sophie to the servants' quarters to show her around, and Benedict is going upstairs or whatever. So we see Lady Whistledown, and she's talking about Benedict finally returning home. We also see Violet is holding hands with Marcus. Like they're in her sitting room, and they're like holding pinkies like that or whatever. We see Lady Danbury and the Queen. They're walking in the Queen's house, and the Queen is happy that Lady Whistledown is no longer talking about the maid wars, because now that Benedict is home, that's what they're going to be talking about. So she's happy to get back to talking about that. So we see Benedict, he's in his office, and he's painting the lady in silver or whatever. And then we also see Sophie show, I mean, not Sophie, we see Miss Wilson showing Sophie around. So she's showing her, where Eloise and Hyacinth, where their rooms are. She's showing her the kitchen, the laundry room. She's just showing her everything or whatever. So we get to talk further to the servants, and they're all, trying to get to know her or whatever. So they ask her, where did she work before? And there was just like, oh, have you ever worked in a house, a house like this? And she was just like, oh no, the last house I worked in, it was only 8 of us. And I think it was Celia, because I think we learned her name later. Celia was just like, well then who did the cooking, the cleaning, and who did all of that? And she was just like, well, I did. And they're looking like, oh snap, like, dang, that's crazy. So they find out that Gregory is coming. Gregory is home, so they take the jellies that they had made for him or whatever. And Sophie was just like, let me help. And Miss Wilson was just like, that's not your job. And she's just like, Celia was just like, no, but I could really use the help. So Sophie helps Celia bring up the jellies or whatever. And Gregory's back. He's taller. He's a little bit grown or whatever. And he's talking about how he doesn't want jellies anymore. And he wants scotch egg and tea or whatever. So they proceed to go to the tea room or whatever, and Benedict pulls his mom to the side, and he tells her, I'm back and I'm ready to find the lady in silver. So she's happy. And then he asked her about the other maid that he wrote about, and she was just like, anything for you, since you're trying to find a wife. I'll do whatever you want me to. I was just like, Violet is a mess. She just want her kids married, and I get it. I get it. I completely get it. So then we start to see a montage of the servants working. We see Sophie with Hyacinth. We see the boys making a mess when Gregory was getting his first shave. And then we transition it to the maid cleaning up after the mess. Um, um, let's see. So okay, so yeah, so we see that. We see Benedict looking at. We see a montage again of Benedict looking at all the different ladies that were that showed up to the masquerade ball or whatever, because Miss Wilson had got their photo cards for them to look at or whatever. We then see Sophie. She runs into Hazel, which is the maid that was with her at Cavender House or whatever, and they're happy to see each other. And Hazel is just like, thanking Sophie that Benedict kept his word and made sure to find her a place, because he promised Sophie that he would do that, and she's glad that he kept his word or whatever. And Sophie is just like, oh, like, okay, that's what's up. Um, so let's see. We see Hyacinth. She's getting dance lessons, and Eloise is there, but she's not paying attention to her. And so Hyacinth is just like, "You're supposed to be paying attention to me." Da 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 da. Da. And Eloise makes a snark remark, and so the dance instructor tells Hyacinth, let's take a break or whatever. So Hyacinth goes and sits in front of Eloise, and she's just like, okay, well, if you don't want to watch me during my dance lessons, then why don't we talk about this book about ballet? And Eloise is again making snark remarks, and Hyacinth is just like, you don't even know what the book is about. It's about, and she says the name of the person, and Sophie interjects and says, that was a good book. She was famous for doing X, Y, and Z. And Eloise like perks up at this or whatever. And Eloise starts to ask Sophie questions about what other books she's read or whatever. And as they're talking, so I noticed the first time I watched it, I didn't notice it, but the second time I watched it, I noticed it. And it was just like the camera changed so you could see Eloise talking to Sophie, and then you see Hyacinth trying to get in view of Eloise. Like, she's trying to get in the camera angle so that she's like trying to get in front of Eloise so Eloise will talk to her. But Eloise isn't paying her any mind. She's just focused on talking to Sophie about the books. And Hyacinth just gets pissed because she's just like, I'm trying to talk to you and you're not paying attention to me. And it's just like, so we then see Fran. She comes into this, and they're at their house, the Kilmartins, that's their name. They're at their house, and she goes into the sitting room, and she's like, she just goes in and she starts kissing John. So she's trying to be spontaneous, and they're like making out, and then they bump heads or whatever. And so he was just like, what's going on? And she was just like, I just wanted to spontaneously have tea with you or whatever. I was just like, girl, be spontaneous with your husband, girl. So we see the maids, they're talking, and Hazel is talking about how she's a psychic and she's an all-seeing things or whatever. So they play a game. The guy maid is like, he has his hands up for like, he has his hands up showing 4, and he's asking her, what do you see? And she was just like, I see 4. So then they're laughing about it, and then they ask, okay, so then do you see who the new neighbor is, because the Bridgertons are getting a new neighbor? And she was just like, I see me when I marry a well-to-do, well-off man or whatever. She had a couple of chuckles, and then the guy was just like, I've seen a lady coming and going, but no man of the house. And Miss Wilson was just like, that's not possible. No mistress would be able to, because he thinks it's a mistress or whatever, since no man's there. So Miss Wilson is just like, no mistress would ever be able to live over here because they just can't do that or whatever. So then they ask Sophie like what she's good at, and she really doesn't answer. She just says something, and they're just like, oh, okay. Eh. So then she let's see. So then we see Miss Violet. She goes to she tells everybody to go, go get everybody ready because they're getting ready because the ladies are getting ready to go to Lady Danbury. So Miss Wilson goes to Violet to check and see if she's ready. And Violet asks her about having a guest over, and Miss Wilson tells her, I'll do whatever you need to do. I'll make sure that all the servants are gone, and we'll you can if you can find a way to get the kids out the house, and I'll be here to help you with your dress after it's done, and I'll make sure you have all the privacy that you need. And then she tells her, life is meant to live. So Sophie runs into Benedict as she's walking Hyacinth out to the carriage because, again, all the ladies are getting ready to go over to Lady Danbury's. So, they have a little awkward run in, and he asked her, do you remember when you asked me if I fell out of place at my cottage? When we were at my cottage, do you remember asking me if I felt out of place, or whatever? And she shakes her head like, yes. And then he was just like, you know what, never mind. She helps him with his button, and then he leaves. Now, mind you, this question that he asked her, she didn't ask him that at my cottage. She asked him that at the, at the masquerade ball. So subconsciously, he knows who she is, but he hasn't put two and two together yet. So they're at Lady Danbury's, and the ladies are talking about Benedict and the lady in silver. And Alice says she thinks she was just like asking, like, what has he said about the lady? Maybe I can see if I can find out who she is. And as she's talking, Lady Danbury is Agatha. She's looking at her like, like, just thinking and just looking or whatever. And so Violet tells her, I please go ahead and do it. You're gonna be my favorite person if you find her or whatever. So she goes to Francesca, and she was just like, oh, don't you think it's time that you had that you invited us over to your new house? And Francesca was just like, oh, I don't think we're ready for that. And she was just like, okay, so a week from Friday then. I was just like, Miss Bridgerton is ready to get her groove back. She is ready to get it on. She ain't playing with y'all. So after she tells her that, she overhears what's her name? She overhears Eloise and Hyacinth talking about Sophie and how she speaks Latin, French. She knows how to read. She knows all this art. And Francesca was just like, that's odd. Most maids don't know any of that. And so, Violet has this look on her face. So we then see Benedict. He's at the men's club, and they're all talking about his search for the lady in silver because, again, clearly everybody knows because it's been in the paper. They really know it's you that's asking, but whatever. I don't know why you didn't think it would be you, but whatever. So he runs into his friend that had a mistress or whatever. So he tells them, and Colin is just like, I would never have a mistress. And then Benedict was just like, Anthony had a mistress, but this was before Kate. And he was just like, oh. And so Will was just like, yeah, I wouldn't, he was like, yeah, I wouldn't have a mistress either, but it's more common than you think. And he was just like, most men have mistresses. And then he was just like, they must marry according to class, but they don't always love that way. And as they're saying this, Benedict is looking at his friend with his mistress, and he sees how in love they are. And as he's looking at them, he's like playing with his butt, the one that Sophie just fixed for him. So we see Violet, she meets up with Sophie and she wants to get to know her. So she asks her where she grew up, and Sophie answers, and then she asks who she worked for before. Um, and she talks about the family that she worked for before, and Violet wants to know why did it end, and Sophie was just like, I had a disagreement with the lady of the house, but please don't, I don't want to relive it. So Sophie, Violet is just like, okay. So then Violet asks her about her family, and she says both her mother and father are deceased. And Violet, she apologizes for her loss, and then she offers her the job permanently to work there. And Sophie says, she'll consider it or whatever. So then we see the next day Violet is with Agatha, and she's talking about how she just has this need to protect Sophie. And then Agatha asked Violet, she has she wants to do something for Alice, but it's really for her. And she feels like she would be selfish if she does it, because again, it would benefit Alice, but it would benefit Agatha more. And Violet tells her she's done so much for them. She's done so much for everybody else. It's okay for her to be selfish. Life is meant to be lived, and she needs to do what she needs to do. So we see Fran and John. They're at their house, and she's putting up pictures, and she's trying to try to get the house ready or whatever for her family coming over. So he asked her, what was up with coming the other day, and she was just like, I just wanted to be spontaneous. And he was just like, she had apologized or whatever, and he was just like, well, I enjoyed it, and I've always, I've refrained myself in our private life out of respect for you. But if you want to be more spontaneous, we can do that. And she was just like, I would like to comply. I was just like, I like this couple. They are so cute together. He loves her down. She loves him down too. You can tell. And he just wants her to be happy. And I love it, because it's just like, I just love it. So we see Sophie, she's looking out the window, she's looking at the stars, and Benedict comes in, and she apologized. Oh, I'm sorry. So then he was just like, no need to be sorry. So they start looking at the stars together, and she was just like, the view isn't as good as it is at my cottage, and she misses it. So they look at each other, and then they almost kiss, and she goes to leave, and he's like, please don't leave. And he doesn't want her to go. So she tells him that Violet offered her the job to stay. And he's talking to her, and he's getting closer, and he's like, well, will you? And she was just like, this has been a dream for her. She's always wanted to have a family like this, and she wants to, this is like, she wants to, this is a dream of hers. Like, she never thought that she would be living and working for a family like what she's always wanted. So he gets closer to her, and he put her hand was sitting on her hand was on a chair, and he puts his hand on top of hers, and he gets closer, and he tells her she deserves more. And he tells her that she deserves more, and she tells him that it may not be wise for her to stay. And he says, because, and she was just like, because. And then he tells her that he wishes for her to stay, but he won't jeopardize her. He wishes for her to stay, and he won't jeopardize it for her. And she says, she was just like, okay, thank you, good night. And she leaves. And as she's walking out, he breaks the pencil that is in his hand, because he's just like, dang it. So then we see Sophie, she's in bed, and she's tossing and turning, she can't sleep. So then she decides to start pleasuring herself, and she just can't reach her climax. So the next morning we see Violet, she's in her room, and she's looking at her body. So she's seeing herself for the first time since her husband passed away. And she's just like, oh, okay. I see you. And then she puts her robe on, and she's just like, oh my goodness. So then we see Agatha. She brings Alice over to see the queen, and Alice tells the queen that she thinks she found the lady in silver. And the queen is just like, okay, well, I hope your theory is correct. And Agatha's just like, well, and she was just like, you're right. She would be a good um lady in waiting. And Alice is just like, wait. And Agatha is just like, because she didn't tell her. So we then hear so then the queen dismisses Alice. So Alice leaves and she tells Agatha, you're just in time for the new whistle down or whatever. And Agatha is just like, oh God. Because it was just like, girl, you thought, but you thought wrong. So then we hear Lady Whistle Down. She's talking about the maid wars and how it's settling down, and now they want to know who the next door neighbor is who's moving into the Bridgerton's house or whatever. So we see Violet. She tells Benedict that they think they found the lady in white. I mean, the lady in silver, and she's going to invite. If with his permission, she's going to invite them over, and then he needs to come in like on a just, oh, I didn't know y'all were here. If that's okay, and he was just like perfect. So her name is Miss Hollis. She comes over and they're having tea. Benedict comes in and he's just like, oh, I didn't know you were having company. He joins them. They start talking. He's asking her questions about swimming. She's saying, yeah, I like to swim in oceans. Like, we used to live off the coast of France. He starts to speak French, and then he's saying, someone once told me that my pronunciation isn't what's up. And she was just like, oh no, your pronunciation is perfect. And whoever told you that is a fool. And he has this look on his face. And then as he does that, we see Sophie coming in, and Sophie smiles at him. And then he asks, where's Hazel or Celia. And she was just like, she notices the lady, and she like, gets in her maid bag, and she's just like, oh, they were busy, so I offered to help out. Anybody wants tea? So she's pouring the tea for Miss Hollis and her mom. And when she goes to pour the tea for Benedict, he puts his hand, he was just like, I don't want any. And he puts his hand over the cup as she pours. So he drops it, and he's just like, damn it. He gets loud. And so Sophie's just like, oh, I'm so sorry. She tries to clean up, and he's just like, leave it. And so she was just like, oh, okay. And she was just like, I'm gonna, I'll bring a new cup. So she, she walks out or whatever. So Miss Hollis and her mom are getting ready to go, and Miss Hollis says, it's always been my dream to see the Bridgerton home. And Violet was just like, well, surely you saw it at the masquerade ball. And she was just like, oh no, I was ill, so I couldn't make it. But I'm sure because everybody had on a masquerade, someone may have thought they saw me. So, Benedict and Violet look at each other because they realize she ain't the lady in silver. So Violet goes to walk them out, and she's waiting for Benedict to come, but he doesn't come. And Sophie comes in, and Violet looks like, okay. And then she walks them out. So Benedict, he goes to Sophie and he apologizes, and he's just like, let me help you. And she was just like, nonsense, I got this. And he was just like, no, let me help you. And she was just like, what did she say? She tells him, sorry. He apologizes. He apologizes to her because he didn't know that she would be there. And she's like, you shouldn't have to apologize to me. And she tells him that he isn't being helpful, especially when he fills her head with foolish ideas. And he tells her he doesn't plan to pursue Miss Hollis, and she doesn't compare. And Sophie is just like, compared to what? Like, and then she says, compare to what? And she was just like, why are you here? Like, why are you always here? And she tells him, this is the best position that I've ever had, and she can't stay if he's always going to be around. Why is he ruining it for her? Like, doesn't he have, like, isn't a bachelor supposed to stay at a bachelor's lodging? And he was just like, well, I will go and I'll stay away from the house if it'll make you comfortable. And she says, please. And he was just like, okay, well, I'll go and I won't return. I won't return as much. And she was just like, good. So she, like, she gets the tea stuff or whatever, and she goes to leave, and then she tells him, you should pursue Miss Hollis. She's a perfect fantasy. So then we see Sophie watching from the room, watching Benedict from the room as he's loading his luggage into his carriage so that he can go to his bachelor's lounging. So we see Fran and her husband and John. They're in the bed, and they're doing the do or whatever. She starts to feel the pinnacle, and then she loses it, so she starts to fake it. And so he was just like, you don't have to do that. And he was just like, did you reach your pinnacle? And she was just like, no, I didn't, and I never reached it. And he was just like, wow. So then he talks her down, like he asked her what she felt before she started to fake it, and then she tells him, and then he tells her, I feel it, like, in my, I feel, when I get to my pinnacle, I feel myself getting closer to you, not just in that way, but in my heart also. And she's just like, and so they start to kiss, and I'm guessing they go back to it or whatever. So we see Lady Danbury. She's at Alice's house, and she's waiting to see Alice because Will is just like, oh, she pissed. I don't know what she pissed about. I know she not pissed at me, but she ain't talked since she came back from yesterday. So Alice comes in, and she was just like, I don't appreciate you. No, she says, I don't want to be the queen's lady in waiting. And her husband's just like, wait, what? Wait, you don't? And so um, Lady Danbury, like, tells her, like, this would be a good thing. You would be her, like, you would tell her the truth. You won't sugarcoat anything. Like, you are the perfect lady in waiting for her. And Alice is just like, well, I can't fill your shoes. And she was just like, you don't need to fill my shoes. You're going to bring your own shoes, and you're going to fill your own shoes. You're going to give her the truth. You will listen to her, give her the truth, and you will become her friend, and you'll be filling your own shoes. And she was just like, okay, I got you. So then we see Violet. She goes to see Benedict, and she's just like, I didn't see you at the house. Um, you left the house so quick, and your sister told me that you're not coming tonight. Is everything okay? And he's just like, yeah, I give up on. I give up on looking for the lady in silver, X, Y, and Z. And so she gives him a pep talk, like, there are other ladies out there for you, and you've always been one to run with your imagination, and that's okay. But it just comes to a point where sometimes your imagination is not always it. So you'll find another one, basically. So we then see Miss Wilson. We see her. She's talking to the maids. The maids are on break. She comes in. They all get up, like, okay, we got to get back to work. And she's just like, no, you guys are on your break, but you guys all get the day off. You just have to leave the house. So they're just like, oh, they're all excited. So Celia goes to Sophie, and she was just like, I hope that you'll come with us to the tavern. And she was just like, you know what? I think I might. So they're all excited that she's going to follow with them or whatever. So we see Miss Wilson. Oh no, she tells Miss Wilson that she decided to take the job permanently. And Miss Wilson is just like, she's happy because the family cherishes her. So we see the family. They're all at the Benedict family. They're all at Francesca's house, and except for Violet and Benedict. And Hyacinth is asking where their mom is, and Francesca was just like, oh, she was ill. And she was just like, oh, what about Benedict? And Gregory says, well, maybe he came down with the same illness or whatever. So Hyacinth gets up to go get a dessert, and what's it called? Eloise comes up, and Hyacinth starts to tell her something, and Eloise is just like, I don't want to hear anything else about marriage, setting tables, dances. Like, I don't care about any of that. And then Hyacinth tells her, lately I thought that you were interested in everyone but me, but now I'm starting to realize that you're only interested in yourself. And she walks away. And I was just like, finally, it is about time somebody told Eloise about herself, because ma'am, it is not always about you. Just because you don't want to get married, that is perfectly okay. No one is, well, your mama is, but everybody else isn't forcing you to get married. The fact that you keep talking down on marriage to all the other people who do want to, who do strive for that, is like, girl, why? Like, okay, you don't want to get married. Good for you. Applause. Quit trying to talk me out of it, or quit talking bad about it, or just stop talking to me altogether, because you are really selfish. It's always about you. And it's like, girl. So the footman comes in. Is that the footman? I can't think of what it is. One of the servants comes to tell Francesca and John that they have another guest. So they go outside to greet the guest, and it's Michaela, John's cousin. And Francesca is just like, oh gosh. So Michaela was just like, what's wrong? You've seen a ghost? And I'm just like, wait, what? Because I started that book and I know where it's going, and I'm just like, but I didn't think they had a. But we'll see. We'll see when that story comes. So John hugs her, and they go inside. So we see Benedict. He's drawing, and this time he's actually drawing a picture of Sophie. And yeah, he's drawing a picture of Sophie, and he gets up to leave. So we see Violet, she's in her room, and she's like, she's making sure she got on her lingerie, she's making sure she looks good. She hears a knock at the door, and then she's trying to figure out where she's going to sit and how she's going to, like, position herself, how she's going to position herself for when he comes in. So she sits by her bed, and she tells him to come in, and he walks in, and he's just like, oh. He was just like, Miss Wilson told me that we were having tea somewhere new, and yeah, this is new. And she was just like, yeah. He was just like, so I'm what I'm gathering from this. And she was just like, yes, I am the tea that you are. What did she say? She said, I am the tea that you are having. I said, I know that's right. So they start to kiss, and then he was just like, we can take things slow. And she said, get undressed. So see, he takes off all his clothes, and she's like, she's in awe by what she sees. And then we see Miss Wilson on, standing outside the door, and she has a smile on her face because she's happy for her lady to be getting her thing, getting her thing on or whatever. So we see Benedict. He walks into the house he walks in the house, and then we see the crew, Sophie and the crew, coming out from another area of the house. And Sophie realizes that she doesn't have her coin purse, so she's just like, I'll meet you guys there. Let me go back and get it. So she goes back in the house. We come back to the house, and we see Benedict. He's knocking on Sophie. He's knocking on Sophie's bedroom door, because he's at her quarters or whatever. He's knocking on the door, no answer. He opens the door, he doesn't see her there. So he starts walking down the stairs, and then we see Sophie walking up the stairs, and then they finally meet and they bump into each other. And she asks, oh, you're here. And then they start making out, and they just getting it on. Like they kissing hard. He takes off her jacket, he lifts her up, puts her up against the wall. They kissing on each other. He like he puts her down, lifts up one leg, sucks his fingers, and then he do what he got to do with his fingers. And she climaxes, and child, this man here. So after all of that, he tells her if she wants him to leave, he will, but he stays away because she consumes him. His eyes search for hers every time he walks in a room. In every room that he enters, his eyes are looking for her eyes. His heart beats whenever she is near, and the reality of her is more tantalizing than the fantasy ever could be. And it's one he can't live without. He says he meant it when he said that she deserves more, and he is determined to give it to her and more. And then he asks, Will you be my mistress? I said, sir, you said all of that to ask this lady to be your mistress, and you don't even have a wife for you to be needing a mistress at this point? Like, sir, what? Like, you said all of that good stuff just to ask her to be your mistress? So Sophie, like, she takes a step back and she looks at him, and then we hear Celia calling, like, hey Sophie, we're waiting on you. So she pushes him away and she gets her coat and she puts it on and leaves or whatever. So she we see them walking outside, and then we hear Lady Whistledown talking over them or whatever. So they're walking by the carriage for the new neighbors or whatever, and we see the new neighbors, and it's the Penwoods. So Rosamond, Posey, and Armenta, they are now the Bridgertons' neighbors. And then the door opens and it's Varley. So she's just like, welcome, a lady. And so they go in, and Varley doesn't look that happy, but she's getting more money from them than she would get from the Featheringtons. And yeah, I ain't mad at her. But that's how the episode ends. So that was the four, because they dropped the first four episodes January 29th, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and then the next four episodes are going to come out February 26th or something like that. So I'll be back to you guys with the remaining four episodes. Again, this season so far is really good. I can't wait till they actually run in when Sophie runs into the Penwoods. I can't wait to see how that's going to happen. But yeah, so it's getting really, really good. I like that we are seeing more of the servants this season, and we're getting their point of view a lot this season. And again, it's because of Sophie. So I really, really like that. But again, so far this season has been good. You guys get down in the comments. Let me know what you guys thought. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, and turning on your post notifications so you'll know whenever I post. And I will see you guys in the next one.